Hey everybody, it's Maria Willis from Card Bomb here for Tonic Studios, and today Stamp Club released a new bundle. This month's bundle is called Backgrounds and Borders, and there are a lot of different ways that you can use this bundle to create backgrounds, to create borders, to create full panels for your cards. There are also some great word dies included, so you can make those pop off your card as well. And today I'm going to walk you through a lot of different ways to use this bundle so that you can really maximize your use. Let's head over to my desk and check it out.
Okay, here's a close-up look at that Backgrounds and Borders bundle. You can see that both the stamp and die set are loaded with fun patterns and useful elements that are going to be great for your card making. To start out, I want to show you how easy it is to use these stamp strips to create backgrounds for your cards and projects. I'm going to start by using these 3 single stripes, and I'm placing them on my cardstock so that they fit in the width of 1 inch. See, I'm showing you on the side. Now I'm picking them up with the door of my MISTI and inking them up with some pink ink. I'm pressing down firmly so that I get a crisp stamped impression, and now I'm lifting my magnet so that I can move my paper 1 inch upwards. That's the cool thing about this stamp set. If you use all 3 of these lines and you space them within 1 inch, all you need to do is move the cardstock 1 inch and you're going to have perfect spacing every single time. So you can see I'm stamping, moving my paper 1 inch repeatedly, and I end up with a perfectly stamped, perfectly spaced out background. Here's a look at that finished background, and you saw how quick and easy it was to make. Now I'm going to show you this next stamp. See the line down the center of the stamp? I'm going to use that to make sure that I'm lining it up perfectly with my cardstock. So I lined that center of the stamp up with the edge of the cardstock, and now I'm inking it up with Clear Mark embossing ink. You can use Clear Mark embossing ink for embossing, but you can also use it on any color cardstock to get a tone-on-tone look. So once again, I'm stamping, moving my cardstock 1 inch, stamping again, moving my cardstock 1 inch, and in a matter of about a minute, I have a perfectly stamped background. So that's the wonderful thing about this stamp set, is how easy it is to get perfect backgrounds very quickly. Again, I'm going to use the center line of this stamp aligned with the edge of the cardstock to make sure that my stamp is straight. This time I'm using a white ink on a colored cardstock, but you can use any colors of ink that you want. You can switch your ink color every single time that you stamp down and do rainbow inks or coordinating colored inks. You can really do it any way you want. As long as you stamp, move your paper 1 inch, and stamp again, you're going to get a perfect background every single time. Now let's take a look at some cards that I've made using the same techniques I've just shown you. So I made an envelope using colored ink on white. I made this hugs card using Clear Mark ink on colored cardstock. And I made this smiles card using white ink on colored cardstock. So you can see it's really easy. This card I used rainbow ink. Every time I stamped down, I switched my color ink. Now I've already shown you that you can line these stamps up from side to side by moving them just 1 inch every time for a perfect alignment. What you need to see now is that they also line up from end to end. Every single strip stamp in this stamp set lines up perfectly from end to end, meaning that if you like to do slimline cards, you like to scrapbook, you like to do large projects, these stamps will work for you too. You can create endless size backgrounds as large as whatever paper size you have, as long as you line them up properly, move 1 inch to the side, or line them up properly from end to end. Now take a look at how perfect this background is. It's absolutely seamless. You cannot tell where the transition is from one stamp impression to the next stamp impression, and there are 4 right there on that background. Now let's take a look at the hexagon chain stamp. I wanted to center that hexagon chain on my cardstock, so on the right side I added a 1/2 inch strip of blue cardstock so that I could bump my cardstock out from the edge of the MISTI. I also marked the 1 inch marks on that blue cardstock just so I could easily slide my cardstock up without having to second guess myself. Again, this stamp set works the same as the other strip stamps. Stamp it, move your cardstock 1 inch, and you will have perfect spacing for your background. If your cardstock is big enough that it doesn't fit in your stamp positioner when you're trying to stamp the second half of it, just mark the back end of your cardstock and use 1 inch increments from the back end of your cardstock. That will work just as well as using 1 inch off the front. Now I've got my hexagon chain stamped in one layer, but I actually want to fill in all the spaces in between with a hexagon chain stamp as well. So it's the same exact thing. I'm just going to lay that down where I want it, and again, stamp, move my paper 1 inch, and now I have the whole background filled with hexagon chains. I want to color in those hexagons, so I'm going to pull out this double hexagon stamp, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Stamp it, move my cardstock 1 inch, stamp it, move my cardstock 1 inch. I'm sure it's getting old, but you can see how easy it is to get perfect stamping and perfect spacing every single time with these stamps. So I did the same thing. I repositioned my stamp, picked a different ink color, and inked up the rest of the hexagons. And here is a card that I made using that same technique. This next card was also made with that repeated background stamping, but these next cards were made with more of a modern art look, and this one has more of a mixed media look because I used embossing and different colored inks to it. So I just want to remind you, you don't have to do repeated stamping. You can use these stamps in any way that you want to achieve any look that you want. Now, one of the fantastic things about this die set are all of the large word dies, but lining them up can be tricky. So here are a couple tips. If you have a T-ruler, that's a great way to make sure that you have a level bottom. You can also use the negative portion of the die to align and properly space the letters. Then you would just peel up the negative piece. Another easy way to align your letters is to run your die through your die cutting machine, grab the die that you just used and some low tack tape. It can be purple tape, washi tape, post-it tape, whatever you have that isn't too sticky. Then you're going to put that on the back side of your die and put your letters back into your die. Press them down firmly so that they stick to that tape and won't fall out if you turn your die upside down. I added foam tape to mine. Now all I have to do is flip that die over, align it properly on the front of my card, press down, and carefully remove the tape from my die. Make sure you're careful so that you don't tear the paper of your die cuts. If you use one of those 3 techniques, you should be able to get perfect alignment every time. Now here are some cards in which I used these techniques. I also added dimension to some of these die sentiments by layering the dies. On this card, I also used the negative piece and then just put a lighter color piece of cardstock behind it. You can also have fun with your dies and mix and match the letters to create new words like smiles. Those negative pieces from your die cuts are also great for creating shaker cards, so make sure that you put those to good use as well. Now back to our die set, you can see that there are these 2 plates that have really cool patterns on them. You can use these plates to create confetti, but you can also use them to create really fun die cut backgrounds, as I have here on this card. You can also use this background to create a full front shaker card, which would be so cool. Now, another thing that you can do with those 2 pattern die plates is to create your own stencil, as I have done with this white piece of cardstock. I'm going to ink blend some blue ink over the top of it and create a patterned background with a really subtle look. The next die that I want to look at is this hexagon chain die. This die has some really cool features. If you look at the ends of it, you can see that the ends of the chain do not cut the paper. So you can see here's one length of chain, and this die does, by the way, match the stamp. But let me show you what happens when you run it through your die machine and it doesn't cut out the ends. You'll see that it's kind of looped into the background and it doesn't come out. So you can either cut that out, as I did with the red one that's on my tabletop, or you can notch that die right back into itself on that paper, tape it down, make sure that it's properly aligned, run it through your die cut machine again, and when you peel that die up, you're going to end up with a double length of that chain. So you can have a chain as long as your biggest piece of paper if you want, because you can just keep connecting them. Now, another cool element of this die set are these small circular and hexagon dies that have, they die cut into your background without cutting out the background. So I'm just going to pick 4 of those out and put them in the center of the hexagon chain and tape them down, run it through my die cutting machine, and when I peel them off, what you're going to see is that they've left these really great patterns cut into the center of the hexagon. You can also use those to create really fun textured backgrounds on your cards, and there is one that's shaped like a hexagon as well. And the next thing I want to show you about this hexagon chain is that these hexagons interlock perfectly. So you can cut them out and nestle them together to create really neat backgrounds, as I have done with this card. You can also change the look of the background by adding the hexagon chain stamp to the die cuts, adding the little die cut hexagons, or adding any of those texture plates that I showed you earlier. Now, speaking of those texture plates, in addition to the 4 that I already showed you, there are 2 larger circle ones and a hexagon one. The largest circle and the hexagon both have coordinating dies that do cut them out. So if you wanted to pop those textured pieces up on your cards, you could do that as well. Now let's take one last look at all of the cards that I've made for this release. And as we do, I want to let you know that this Backgrounds and Borders bundle is exclusive to Tonic Studios and is available now at both the Tonic Studios UK and USA shop. For more information on this release, you can click the links in the description box below. If you'd like more inspiration, to see more samples, and to be able to enter a giveaway to win this bundle for free, please head to my blog at www.cardbomb.com. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's release, and happy crafting, everybody!